The nation's largest producer and distributor of fresh eggs is experiencing a bird flu outbreak. Cal-Maine Foods has temporarily stopped production at a facility here in Texas. Earlier in the week, authorities say the person who worked on a farm in the state and had direct contact with a dairy cow came down with the bird flu. It resulted in them testing positive last week. Here to give us some more insight on this issue and the risk to the general public, we've got Chris Van Duzen. He is Director of Media Relations at the Texas Department of State Health Services. Chris, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Happy to be here.
All right, first, for those of us who don't know what exactly it is, can you help us explain what bird flu is?
Yeah, sure. So as you would think, it's a type of flu, and it's an influenza virus, influenza A, and there are many different kinds of flu. And this particular one that we call H5N1 is kind of native to birds, wild birds, and it's adapted to spread within bird colonies and can be very, have a very serious impact on them. And as we have seen again this week, if it spreads to domestic animals like flocks of chicken, it can have a really severe impact on them as well. Every once in a while, we will see this virus go from just working, spreading in birds to other kinds of animals. It's happened directly from birds to humans in the past, only once previously in the United States. We've seen it in other mammals from time to time. And as we announced this week, this is the first time we've seen, that spread go from what we think was birds to cattle to humans here in the United States.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned it there about how bird flu generally is passed. It's from, animal to animal, but this is the first time we've seen it from mammal to human, the first time globally that we've seen that happen. As this virus evolves, can we expect to see more of that going from animal to human?
I think that's an open question. It really does depend on how, the virus changes over time. Viruses have an ability to adapt, as they replicate and circulate in a particular population, in a bird population. At this point, we got the results of the genetic sequencing of this particular sample back from the CDC just this morning. So we know a little bit more about it. It is very closely related to the viruses that were detected in cattle in Texas over the last couple of weeks. That's not a surprise. And in looking more specifically at what the virus looks like, there have not been any changes within it that would make it easier to spread from, one person to another person. So we still think, human to human transmission is a very, very low risk. That's not to say, it's not possible at some point in the future if this virus adapts in some other way.
I want to talk about the process there that you mentioned about sending this genetic sequencing off to the CDC and then you get that back. Can you walk us through what that process is like, how you guys go about getting that virus sequence and then sending it off to the CDC, and then how long do you have to wait before you get it back?
Yeah, so in this case, just kind of walk you through it. There was an individual who had kind of direct contact with dairy cattle, sick cattle up in the Texas Panhandle. They developed conjunctivitis, pink eye, like an inflammation of the eye, and decided to get tested because we knew this was a concern after finding the evidence of this virus in cattle. And so, they came forward, that sample was collected, and it's first tested at a lab in Texas. So in this case, the Laboratory Response Network lab in Lubbock at Texas Tech is the closest to that area. So they do some initial testing and kind of determine, kind of broadly, okay, yes, this is flu, positive for flu, and it's sort of that H5 component of flu. And then only CDC can do the confirmatory testing and really narrow down on more specifics about what that flu looks like. So it's shipped off to the CDC. Their laboratory runs additional testing. We got that result back. They did that over the weekend, and we got that result back over the weekend. And then there's some additional work to do that genetic sequencing, really looking at what that genetic signature is within the virus and trying to decode that, match it up to other specimens in the past, see if there are mutations or adaptations that have occurred in its genome. And so that's kind of the process. And so, that entire, process took less than a week, really just a few days. But it's the result of a lot of people working together in a lot of different places, to do the really nitty gritty science of this.
Okay, so with all of that in mind, and I'm short on time here, what is the actual danger to the public? Should we be concerned?
Sure. Everything we know right now is that the threat to the general public remains low. Nothing about this case really changes that, especially now that we know more about the virus itself. That said, we do want to make sure people who are working around animals, particularly on dairies in the Panhandle, where we have seen this in cattle, are aware of this. We want them to be able to take precautions. We want them to be sensitive for any symptoms that they may have, so they can get tested if they think they might have been exposed and could have avian influenza, because we want to find these cases if we do see any potential for that in Texas.
Chris Van Dusen with the Texas Department of State Health Services. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks.